Okay, so as you know, your assignment is due next week or something. And I asked you to do a cognitive walkthrough. First off, is there any questions about the assignment before? I'll give you a chance at the end of class also to ask questions, but does anyone have any questions before? Okay. All right. So this is the slide that we looked at last time. I'll go over it just to sort of remind ourselves. But a cognitive walkthrough is an expert review, so just one person looks at the software. What they're going to do is they're not going to go through the interface and look at every button. What they're going to do instead is they're going to think about what is it that the user wants to do, okay? And then they'll try and do that, okay? And when they do it, they're serving the role of what we call a dual expert. So a dual expert means that they know how it should behave, okay? So that helps them identify errors. So if the user interface is telling them one thing and they know that that's not what's actually happening, that's why you have to have that dual expertise, okay? And so we'll go through core tasks. We'll have a set of guidelines, and so at every step, we'll think about how our evaluation's doing relative to the guidelines. And then we will, So you'll see the guidelines and stuff later. Okay, so I'm going to do it we'll do it as an experiment. We're going to do it on Tor. And before we do it, since you have to be a dual expert, then we need to know how Tor works. Okay, so I'll spend the first part of class just talking about how Tor works and what it does. And then we'll do the actual cognitive walkthrough part itself. Yeah. It could be, I don't recall. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So there's consensus. It's not from me. If it's not the 29th, it's not my fault. Okay. All right. So Tor is a tool that lets you browse the internet anonymously. Okay. So what does anonymous mean when it comes to the internet? So anonymous means that no one knows who you are, essentially, right? And it can actually mean different things depending on the context, right? So for example, if you're using Facebook and you're anonymous, that might mean that like the name that you're using isn't your real name. Okay, it's a made up name. Okay. Now, just for interest, we actually call that pseudonymous or pseudonymous because all your Facebook actions with the same name can be linked together. Okay, so I know that it's the same person posting these three pictures. I don't know who that picture is, who that person is, but I do know that those three are linked together, okay? Whereas like true anonymity would be like all three pictures, I wouldn't know who they are from, and I also wouldn't know that they're even from the same person, okay? So like, for example, authors sometimes will write under a pen name, and then they'll put out 5 novels, right? And so you can tell that those 5 novels were written by the same author, but you don't know which author it was, okay? So that's pseudonymous. And then if all 5 of them had 5 different names, you wouldn't even know that they were written by the same person. And so that's anonymity, okay? So what we're shooting with for Tor is kind of, we would like anonymity, but what we're going to do is we're going to tolerate a little bit of pseudonymity, okay? So if you think of interactions with a website, like, I want to get a search result, so I search for this. The search result has to come back to the same person, right? If my identity switches halfway through, right, and then it goes to then it doesn't know where to send it, okay? So I have to maintain sort of a persistence of identity, at least for those kinds of interactions. Anyways, okay, so that's anonymity versus pseudonymity. Now, back to the original question, what does it mean to be anonymous? So I have a fake Facebook name, fake Twitter name or whatever. That's anonymity at the level of the data that I'm disclosing. So I choose to sign up for Facebook. I choose to put a name in. I choose if I'm going to use my real name or not. It's all choices that I make, okay? So that's one level of anonymity. Another level of anonymity is you can think about the network level, okay? So all my packets are coming from a computer, and that computer has an IP address, okay? The server has to know the IP address, otherwise it can't send the responses back to me, okay? So it's not a choice, okay? So what I might do is, so then now that's kind of like pseudonymity as well, right? So all my traffic, they might not know who I am, right? the server, but they do know my IP address. And later we'll talk about cookies. And so cookies are a way that you could actually link interactions together across websites. But just assume that like Google has like 5 different websites, like or Facebook has Instagram and they have Facebook. And if they see traffic from the same IP address to one and then the same to the another one, they might conclude that that's the same person. Okay, so it's like a pen name when you write a novel. It's a name that represents you. Okay. And so normally, now let's say you do something bad, illegal, illicit with that IP address, right? Law enforcement may first get the IP address. Then what they'll do is they'll try and link that IP address to a person. And the way they'll do that is they'll go to the ISP, like Rogers or Concordia in this case or whatever, because they're the ones that assigned the IP address to you. They usually would have a business record of who has an IP address at a particular time, okay? So now they have the owner of the account. Now, does that mean they have the person that sent the packets? Not necessarily, right? So you know it came from my Wi-Fi network and I pay the bill for my Wi-Fi network, but it wasn't necessarily me. It could have been my kids. It could have been someone that I gave the password to, whatever, okay? And so that level of attribution is generally not possible on the web. Okay, at a technical level, okay? If users disclose who they are, then that's fine. So at the Facebook kind of user level, it's fine. But at a technical level, you can't pinpoint people, okay? Now, I might have logs myself, and so I might say, well, you know, my router uses this NAT addressing, and so you got an IP address and a port, and I know that that port was assigned to Jeremy's iPhone at that particular time. And so maybe I could link it back to a device or whatever, okay? And so I may not do that as a consumer, like a home consumer. I might not have a router that's powerful to do that, but something like Concordia would, right? So even if illicit activity happened from Concordia's network and it was all given the same IP address, they may be able to trace it back to an individual user. So anyways, okay. I just flashed the answer, but besides Tor, what are some things that you could use for anonymity if you just care about IP address? You want to hide your IP address, what's the simplest way to do it? Okay, so proxy servers or VPNs are the 2 typical ways, okay? And so what Tor is it's actually kind of more or less a fancy proxy or a fancy VPN. Now, sorry, I made these slides a few weeks ago. I have to remember what's on the slides and what's not. Let's just keep going and see. Okay. So these are a little light, so I'll do lots of talking. Okay, so a proxy server and a VPN, they kind of more or less do the same thing. They serve different purposes. So a proxy server is actually meant to, it's closer to the purpose that we want. The purpose being that you want the IP address of the proxy instead of the IP address of you to show up at the server when a request comes. So the way a proxy server works is it just forwards the traffic. So I want to go to Facebook to the proxy server, and then the proxy server goes to Facebook, okay? Then Facebook comes back. Facebook only knows that the proxy server asked for it, okay? So it sends it back to the proxy server, and then the proxy server sends it back to me, okay? Now the proxy server needs to know for outbound traffic, when the response comes back, like a proxy server could have 1 million people using it at the same time, right? So Facebook comes back, how does it know it's going to send it to me and not one of its other users? Okay, so it needs to track who's asking for what, okay? So the proxy server has to have a log of this IP address is asking me for this resource. And so when the response comes back, it knows to send it to me as opposed to any other user that's accessing it, okay? So those logs could be used to ultimately trace back to me. Okay, so if someone cared enough, the server would say, okay, I see this IP address. I know it's a proxy server because proxy servers don't really hide, right? I'll look it up and I'll see, oh, lots of people are using this as a proxy server, so I know it's a proxy server. Then I'll go to the ISP of that proxy server's IP address. I'll figure out who the human is that owns that account. And then I'll go and say, I want to see your logs, okay? And then you go and you see the logs, and then it says that it was me that was doing that traffic, okay? Now what proxy servers will do is they'll delete their logs, okay? So that's fine. If they delete their logs, then it's over, okay? But you, as a user, you don't know whether they delete their logs or not. They can tell you they do, but do they actually do it? I don't know, okay? Secondly, deletion is itself a whole thing. There's different levels of deletion, right? So if I drag something to my recycling bin on my Mac, is it actually deleted? Not really. Okay, so you can usually do forensics and you can recover it. And usually what deletion means is it doesn't mean you zero out the data. It just means that you drop the pointer to the data. So the data is still sitting there. It's just that it will get overwritten eventually. We're no longer saying don't overwrite that data. Okay, so it just sort of sits there. And you can go and you can try and overwrite it with zeros. And then this is like, there's a big difference between solid state drives that everyone uses now and the old magnetic drives. But in the old magnetic drives, even if you zero it out, it doesn't necessarily like fully zero it out. Like if you could measure it at an like electronic level, you could tell with some probability whether those bits were a 1 or a 0 before that operation was applied. SSDs work a little differently. And then there are some like secure deletion where you encrypt everything with a key, and so instead of deleting the data, you delete the key. And a key's a little smaller, so you can really scrub that key out of memory, and then you can leave the data there because it's encrypted, and if you don't have the key anymore, it doesn't matter. Anyways, okay, so that's a proxy server. So a proxy server is not, it basically requires you to trust the proxy operator if you want anonymity at an IP level. And the adversary in this case is more like a state level actor, okay? It could be a hacker who breaks into the proxy server, right, and steals the logs. So that's possible. But usually it would be a state level actor. So it may be people that we want to have that power, like law enforcement when they're investigating child pornography, okay? We want law enforcement to be able to do that, and so we may think of that as a good thing, okay? But it might be a government in a country who have laws that we don't agree with, right? And they may be going after protesters in that country, right? And so in that case, we may say, oh, actually, we don't agree with it, okay? It may be our own intelligence agencies acting, right? So our agents sometimes need to do things and they want to do it anonymously on the internet as parts of their investigation or their intelligence gathering. And so we don't want other governments to be able to back out the anonymity of our agents when they're doing their espionage work, okay? So anonymity is kind of a controversial topic because it does help crime, okay? It helps criminals get away with crime, okay? But it can also help dissidents or journalists or like law enforcement themselves when they're doing investigation, espionage, military, that type of thing. It can help them as well, okay? So anyway, so I'm not here to tell you anonymity is good or bad. I tend to think it's better to have it as an option than not to have it. But anyways, it at least has good purposes and bad purposes. Okay, a VPN is not meant to be a proxy. Okay, so VPN, the idea behind a VPN wasn't let's write down a protocol that will let people proxy. Okay, what it's meant to do is it's meant to allow you to securely access a network from outside. So Concordia has a VPN. You used it probably on assignment 1, or maybe not. But anyways, so they're concerned that like someone's going to hack EAS from outside of Concordia. Okay, and so what they do is they say, okay, we're just going to shut off all access to EAS except for people who are on campus. But now you have the problem that a bunch of people work from home. Okay, so the solution there is a VPN. So a VPN allows me to hop into Concordia. And now my traffic is output from a Concordia server, so it looks like I'm internal to Concordia, so I can access all of Concordia's resources as if I'm sitting at Concordia. Okay. Now, if I'm in the U.S. and I want to watch Netflix in Canada, right, I can also use the VPN to make my traffic look like it's coming out of Concordia, right, which happens to be in Canada. Okay, so a VPN can be used as a proxy server, but that isn't the purpose for it. Okay, VPN uses like custom encryption, so it has its own encryption protocol between you and the VPN server, whereas a proxy server would tend to just run over HTTPS or something like that. Okay, now encryption is another thing that we can talk about. So when you use a proxy server, is that connection encrypted? So first and foremost, you have two links. You have the link between me and the proxy server, and then there's the link from the proxy server to the server. Okay? And so the way encryption works is it's up to the proxy to decide between me and the proxy. So the proxy may give you secure traffic, or it might not, right? That's totally up to it, okay? It has to decrypt everything in the middle because it has to know where to go and what to ask for and things like that, okay? So I don't have end-to-end encryption, okay, with the website. Well, I actually do. It's complicated, but anyways, at least in terms of routing the information, I'll come back to the end-to-end encryption in a second. So it's going to decrypt the stuff in the middle. I'm going to instruct the VPN, go to Facebook and load Facebook, okay? So it's going to decrypt that instruction, okay? So it knows what to do, okay? Now, whether it goes to Facebook over an encrypted channel or not, right, I can't tell. Okay, I have no way of seeing that. All I know is that I encrypted it to the proxy, but what the proxy does from there, I don't know, right? So maybe it encrypts it, maybe it doesn't, okay? Now, if Facebook's the kind of website that will only do HTTPS and never do HTTP, then I am reasonably sure that it's being encrypted, okay? But I'm not exactly sure, okay, what it's doing. Right, okay. And so then, what will happen is the traffic will come back to me, okay? Now, I can do an SSL certificate exchange through the proxy, right? So, and once I do it, then eventually Facebook and me will end up with a key, and the proxy is just a classic man in the middle. It doesn't know what the key is, okay? And so I can actually get an end-to-end encryption to Facebook. Then the proxy can't decrypt my traffic in the middle. So it's safe to send passwords and credit cards and things like that through a proxy server. They're no different than your Wi-Fi router or anything else. They're just they're a person in the middle, okay? But what they are decrypting is your instructions to the proxy server so that they know what to ask for. Okay. And then VPNs are similar. It's just sort of a custom encryption between you and the VPN. Okay. Next time I teach this, I'll add some diagrams and things like that. But is this clear enough, or is there questions about it? Okay. So why would you use a proxy server? What are like the big uses of it? So one is you're a criminal, you want to hide your activity, or you're a dissident or a journalist or whatever, so you want to hide it. What are some other reasons why you might use a proxy? Okay, sure. So it's okay. So there is a kind of reverse of a proxy server where the server will send you traffic. Basically, it will have like 20 proxies, and it will pick one to send the traffic to you, right? So these are called CDNs, content distribution networks, and so they're a little bit like a proxy. And this whole encryption thing, like, does the SSL tunnel end at the CDN or does it end at the website? That gets really complicated, and there's a whole bunch of security vulnerabilities there. But yeah, so that's one thing. The other thing is the number one use of this is, actually I mentioned it already. So I'm in the US, I want to watch Netflix in Canada, so we call it like geo-hopping. So basically there's some services that you can only access from some countries. Sometimes things are free if you access it from the right country. And so that's usually why people use it. And then the other thing, I guess it falls technically under you're doing criminal things, but like nothing like too serious, is like some sort of file sharing, right? So this isn't, I don't know if it's as popular today because of streaming is like pretty cheap. Like you can basically listen to any music you want for like $15 a month. And you can watch lots and lots of movies for like $15 a month. But back when I was your age, right, you couldn't do that. You would have to buy CDs, and they were $25 just for one album, right? And so, as you can imagine, lots of people just downloaded it. And when you do that, then in countries like the United States, they started enforcing copyright law. So they would put up albums, and then they would write down all the IP addresses of people that downloaded it. Actually, they went after if you shared it. But a lot of these things were set up as peer-to-peer. So like, as you were downloading it, you were sharing the chunks that you had, right? So that was sort of the mechanism that it used. And so lots of people, they were just downloading, but they didn't realize that they were sharing it. And so they went after the people who shared it. And then, yeah, so they had a bunch of IPs. Then they went to the ISPs. They got the names. Then they wrote scary letters to the people who owned the accounts. And then people freaked out. And then everyone said, oh, we need to use proxy servers. And yeah, and so that was the thing.
Against censorship in some countries.
Thank you. So that's the third option, and actually that's a good one. I should maybe take some notes. Not that it affects you, but ways to improve the slides for next year. Yeah. So the final thing is. Yeah, so there's a lot of countries where the internet is restricted. Okay, so China is a good example. And so there's certain websites that you can't use. And so what you can do is you can access those websites. So basically the way it works is the government, they have certain gateways on the internet, and they'll just drop packets if they see, like say you're going to Google or something, then they'll just drop it, and that's how it works, okay? So if you can get out of the country with a connection to a proxy that's outside of the country, that can go and fetch Google for you, and it will return it to you over an encrypted channel. So from the firewall perspective, it just looks like you're talking to this person that's in whatever, Hong Kong or Taiwan or somewhere like nearby, right? That's all you see is that traffic. But you don't know that, oh, they're actually, that person's relaying information to and from Google, okay? And so that is another use case, a huge use case of Tor, is they'll go in, we'll talk about it, but you can use Tor to try and get out. Now, what the governments will do then is they'll ban all Tor. So Tor has to like publish all of their nodes in order for you to find them, right? And so they have a list, a directory of Tor nodes, and so the government will just ban all of them. So then what Tor did is they said, okay, we're going to, we have these like special nodes that aren't published in our list. They're called bridges. And what we'll do is we'll literally go in the country, we'll give it to people we trust, and they'll hand it to you, like you'll get a QR code or like just a code. And then you can go into Tor, you can type that code in, and it will give you one of these bridge relays. And the bridge will just, it's like a proxy to the Tor network. Nobody knows that bridge node is a Tor node. And so the idea is, now the governments will try and do undercover operations and get them and ban them and things like that, but it turns into more of a cat and mouse game as opposed to like just blanket banning everything.
It happens to Iranian protestant in these recent months, and many students just buy some virtual servers for their family because they couldn't contact with their family because of the restriction that government
Right.
and that's it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the Iranian situation is interesting because then what the government did for a short period of time is they just turned the internet off. Period. Right. And then you can't do anything. Right. And so yeah, if you're in a country like that and there's protests and the internet just turns off, you should probably run and hide, like, because bad things are about to happen. But yeah. So but that's an example where Tor is probably, I assume, active. They'll work with activists in the country, and they'll hand things out by hand in order for you to proxy. But
They use just some proxy servers.
yeah, okay. Yeah, so in that case, maybe the government hasn't caught up to banning them yet. But yeah. Okay, so the way Tor works, I kind of stole these pictures just from Tor itself. What Tor is at a high level is it's actually just a network of proxy servers. And the main idea is that instead of connecting to one proxy, you're going to go through 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, okay? So the standard number is 3. So you're going to pick 3 proxy servers. You're going to send it to the first, you're going to send it to the second, you're going to send it to the third. The third will send it to the server, okay? First off, there will be a list of all the Tor nodes that are available, that are online at a particular time. And so this directory is maintained by Tor. It will be hard-coded into your client, so when you download the software, you'll know where to go and ask for the list, okay? Then you'll get a list of Tor nodes. The people that operate Tor nodes are volunteers, and you don't necessarily know who they are. They could be bad people, okay? They could be the Iranian government. They could be the Chinese government, okay? You don't know. You know the IP address of where they are. In some cases, you could know that, oh, this is a node that's being run by the University of Waterloo, for example. So they run a Tor node, right? So I might be like, I trust them, right? I trust that node in particular, okay? But then there's a bunch of other nodes that I don't really trust. And they do have a sort of, they have like a set of kind of like trusted nodes that they like personally know and things like that. And so they try and give you at least one of those nodes when you set up a circuit. But anyways, you don't have to understand all of that. For now, just understand that you're going to go to the directory. It will say these are all the nodes, and you'll pick 3 nodes at random. Another thing too is that nodes themselves, okay, I'll explain this later. Let's talk about what happens and then I'll explain it. Okay, so here we pick whatever, these 3 nodes, and so we're going to send our traffic through it. Okay, so if we ask to talk to Bob, we'll send it to the first node. First node forwards it to the second node forwards it to the third node, and the third node forwards it to Bob. Now, Tor itself uses its encryption, okay? And so the way Tor works is, as long as you're talking within the Tor network, then you're using Tor's own encryption, okay? Now, they just use HTTPS anyway, so it's the same kind of encryption that you would be using. In the earlier days, they did more custom encryption, but now they don't bother. But once it leaves that last computer, the last node, that's called the exit node, and it goes to Bob, whether that's encrypted or not is actually just whether it would be encrypted whether Alice talked to Bob directly. Okay, so if Alice went to Bob directly and it was over HTTPS, then that last link would be over HTTPS. And if it wasn't over HTTPS, then it wouldn't. Okay, so red here doesn't mean it's strictly not encrypted. It's more like, you know, it's encrypted or not depending on what would happen if you didn't go through Tor. Okay. Okay, and then later what will happen is it will it's expensive to build the path and tear the path down. So I'll talk about why in a second. So it will usually hold on to a circuit. This is called a circuit. It will hold on to a circuit for about, I think, between 10 and 30 minutes. I forget the exact number. And then it will automatically refresh it. And if at any time you want to refresh your circuit, you can refresh it as well. Okay. So I'll say a few things about this first of all. So first off, in terms of terminology, the first node is called the entry node. Okay, so that's the first node that you see. The middle nodes are we just usually call them middle node. They're not particularly special. And then the last node is called the exit node. So you have the entry node and the exit node. Okay. The way it works is you actually use kind of like encrypted tunnels inside of encrypted tunnels. So I'm going to actually... I was going to see if I can point at the screen, but just because this is being recorded, it's probably more... It's better if I can somehow get what I'm pointing at on the recording itself. So just give me a second. This will, I think, work. Okay. So this is the entry node. This is the middle node. And the last one's the exit node. Sorry. Okay, so what will happen first is Alice does talk to them in order, okay? So what she'll do first is she'll talk to the entrance node, okay? And she's not going to say, hey, entrance node, I want you to make a circuit between these 3 nodes, okay? So you might think, well, then the entrance node will go find the middle node and tell the middle node who the exit node is, and then now you have a circuit, okay? What Alice does is she actually very deliberately sets it up in rounds so that the nodes that are on the path don't know the other nodes that are on the path, essentially, okay? So what Alice will do is she'll first get an encrypted connection to the first server, okay? Now, the first server, the entrance node, it does have to forward all of the information to the middle node. So it does have to know who the middle node is, okay? Otherwise, it won't work. But does it have to know who the exit node is? No, just the middle node has to know who the exit node is, okay? But otherwise, it doesn't, okay? And it doesn't have to know who Bob is, okay? So what we want is the property where every node only knows where it's getting the data from and where the data is going, okay? So what Alice will do is she'll first get an encrypted tunnel to the first node, okay? Then she'll use that encrypted tunnel, so think of it as like a really big tunnel, to make like kind of like an inner tunnel that will go to the middle node. Okay, so now she has this sort of inner tunnel that goes all the way to the middle node. Okay, now the top node it can decrypt that first layer of the tunnel. Okay. And the first layer of the tunnel, all it does is say, go talk to the middle node, okay? And now that, but it can't decrypt further. So it can decrypt that outer purple layer, but it's not going to be able to decrypt that inner green layer, okay? And so the instruction for the middle node to go to the exit node is going to go inside the green tunnel. And what that means is that the first node doesn't know what that information is, okay? So then what Alice will do is she'll make like an inner tunnel. This is really terrible, I apologize, but I hope you get the idea. And it will go all the way to the third server, okay? So, so let me just go to the next slide. Okay, so the net result of all of this is the entry node knows who Alice is, okay? It knows Alice's IP address, okay? It knows that she's using Tor because it's a Tor node, okay? So it knows that this IP address is using Tor. It doesn't know who she is as a person, just the IP address. And all it knows is it's forwarding information to the middle node, okay? It doesn't know what actual website Alice is going to, or what Alice's IP address is visiting, okay? It also doesn't know who the exit node is, okay? And then similarly, each node has a similar property. So the middle node knows the entrance node, where it's getting the information from, and it knows the exit node, but it doesn't know who Alice is, and it doesn't know what the website is either, okay? And then the exit node knows that some Tor user is going through this middle node, right? And it also, I should note that it doesn't know how long the path is. Like maybe it went through 10 nodes before it got to it. It doesn't know. It knows that there's at least one other node in front of it, which is the middle node. But it does know the website that's being visited, okay? But it doesn't know who Alice is or any of the earlier nodes that Alice is doing, okay? So there's no one server that knows all three of them, okay? Now, the exit node is in a precarious position because let's say that Alice is doing something bad, like accessing child pornography. Then what law enforcement is going to do is they're going to look at the IP address and they're going to see that it's this exit node. And they may not know what Tor is, right? It could be in some country with some local police, like you never, like, it's not like there's one police, like there's lots of branches of the police and things like that, right? So the actual investigator who's investigating the case, you don't know what their technical sophistication are. There's obviously lots of law enforcement that know about Tor, but not every officer does. And so they may come and kick down the door of the person who has the exit server and take all their servers away and charge them. And so this has happened, okay? So it's risky to be a volunteer and say, hey, I want to be a node on the Tor network, because if you're assigned as an exit node, then your law enforcement's coming for you for all the illicit traffic that goes over your exit node, okay? Now, what Tor does is they say, okay, you know what, you can choose. So if you sign up to be a Tor volunteer, you can say, I only want to be a middle node, right? I don't want the responsibility or the liability of being an exit node. And also, if I'm an entrance node, I also know all the users who are using Tor. So that's still sensitive information. Even if you don't know where they're ultimately going, it's still sensitive information to know at least, hey, here's a bunch of people who are actually using Tor, right? So for example, I mentioned University of Waterloo having a Tor server, so that's real. And they specifically say we want to be a middle node. We don't want to be like the ethics clearance, like we talked about ethics and usability, the ethics clearance to hold on to the IP addresses of everyone that's using Tor, that's too much for us. Okay, so we don't want to be an entrance node. We certainly don't want University of Waterloo, traffic like going to illicit uses, right? But if we're a middle node, it doesn't matter, right? We just see another Tor node on one side and we see another Tor node on the other side, and that's fine. And we're contributing to Tor without having either the privacy issue or the liability issue. Okay, now let's say you want to attack Tor. Okay, the way you attack Tor is actually, at first you can do it the same as a proxy server, except for your job is 3 times harder. Okay, so I have my IP address and I look it up and I see, oh, that's a Tor exit node. So I go over to the exit node, I find, the real identity based on the IP address from the ISP. I take that server, I hope that it has logs, and then I figure out who the middle node is. Then I go over to the middle node and then I go to the first node and that, okay? So what Tor does to prevent this attack is they'll deliberately choose 3 nodes in 3 different countries and ideally in different continents, okay? So generally your traffic is going to, maybe go to Europe, and then maybe it goes to South Asia, and then maybe it goes to the US and then it exits, okay? So you're not going to go through 3 US nodes and then exit, okay? So that's a deliberate design decision of Tor. So that makes it hard for government level actors in order to go and actually trace the traffic, okay? Now the other thing that you can do on Tor, which isn't technically possible, in the sense that if you just look at it at the level of encryption, right, you would say, I need to know all 3 of the nodes, okay? If I know anything less, like say I know the entrance node and the exit node, right? I see traffic going into Tor from the entrance node. I see traffic going out of Tor from the exit node, but I can't link the 2 together. I don't know that the traffic that I see coming into this entrance node is the same as the traffic that's going out of my exit node that I control, okay? Or could I know that? So I don't know it from the encryption because there's that missing link, right? Okay, but what I do know, for example, is I know the middle node in common, right? So first off, I can see if I control the entrance node, I know of all the people sending traffic to me, this is the set that's going to this particular middle node. And I know the same thing from the exit side, right? I know all this traffic that's leaving me is the same that is the traffic, the subset, this is the subset that came from that middle node, okay? So now I've narrowed my traffic down, so I have a smaller set of traffic that's using that middle node, okay? Now, could I still conclude that this is the same person?
So I have to break the encryption level by level.
Yeah, okay, and let's assume that that's impossible. So it's impossible to break the encryption. Is there anything else I can do?
Look at the timing of the packet.
Exactly. So you're going to see 50 packets come in and they all have a certain size, right? You're going to pass them on to the middle node, and a split second later, 50 packets with the exact same size, right? They come out of the exit node from that middle node, right? And what you can do is you could introduce delays yourself. So if you're the entrance node, what you could do is you could put random delays in to make a kind of pattern, and then you can look for that pattern at the exit node, okay? Now, it turns out that you actually have to be the entrance node and the exit node. So if you're the entrance node and the exit node, you know that middle node in common, okay? By using these patterns, what if you're before the entrance node? So you're not actually the entrance node, but you're on the connection between the user and the entrance node. What that means is, for example, you're the ISP of the user. So I'm a Canadian user. I use Concordia, so Concordia is my ISP right now, okay? So Concordia can see the traffic pattern of me, and they can see that I'm sending stuff into Tor, okay? So that's fine, right? Now let's say I'm accessing a Canadian website, okay? That's also, it doesn't matter that all the traffic bounces around Europe or whatever and comes back, right? The server has server logs, and they also have timing information of all the packets, maybe, depends on how detailed the logs are, but they might have packet timings for all the information as well. Okay, so if my ISP logs get put together with the server logs and this pattern emerges, right? Some traffic goes into Tor and it has this shape, and then traffic hits the server from Tor with this shape, right? There'll be a significant delay in between, but the inter-packet delay and the size of packets and things like that won't change. Then you could say, well, that's the same user, okay? So we call this a global adversary. So a global adversary is someone that's on both ends. They're on the end into Tor and the end out of Tor, and it's not that crazy to think that that's possible, okay? So anyway, so Tor does not, they don't guarantee anything against a global adversary. They'll just say we can't do anything. Now they will do little things to like try and, there's a bunch of things that they do to try and prevent this, but then people write papers and they have crazy ideas about other ways of fingerprinting, and it basically is impossible to prevent. So Tor doesn't protect against a global adversary. What else? There was one other thing I wanted to say.
When you mentioned no one server knows Alice ID,
Yep.
you're talking about the nodes, right?
Let's see. So the and in this sentence is important. So it's it should think of brackets. So it's like no one server knows bracket Alice's IP address and website being visited and bracket. So no one server knows both of those pieces of information.
Okay.
Yeah. So one server knows her IP address, one server knows the website being visited, but no one knows both of them. Yeah.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
So let's say there's one of the difference between I'm the government and I'm trying to know what you're doing in the network, and I'm the government and I'm trying to know what the whole class here is doing. So now let's say if the government is trying to be the global node, right? Is there a way to like to be sure that for the government to be sure that okay I must be the beginning node and the exit node for a particular person?
Right. So the entrance and exit nodes will be like randomly chosen and changed every 10 minutes.
That means there's no way for the government to try to pinpoint just one particular person, because you don't know if the government might have the exit node and the beginning node, but since it's random, they might not.
Exactly. Yeah, so part of Tor, the reason they refresh every 10 minutes or so is that maybe you get unlucky and you get the government entrance and exit, but then at least they only have it for 10 minutes, then you're going to choose a different set of nodes. Tor is also a lot more picky about their entrance nodes, so that's where they'll try and like lean on personal connections and things like that. And so they don't let everyone be an entrance node. They have this entry guard program. And so some of that, my understanding anyways, is it's based on reputation and things like that. So there is a chance of that attack happening, but Tor mitigates it by trying to have lots of nodes that are available that are good, and then randomly like rebuilding circuits.
So
Yeah.
what's the point of being that volunteer as we have many risks involved with that?
Yeah. So it's just people who believe in anonymity and freedom and things like that. So like you say, there are risks involved, but everyone there is sort of, I would say politically, they're either because they want the data, right? They're bad guys, or it's because they have some political motivation. For it.
So I'm interested to use it, but I'm not interested to be a volunteer, to be rational.
Yeah. So everyone, so we all are going to use it in 5 minutes, but we won't be a node, right? So when you download the software, it doesn't make you a node automatically, and you have to. I mean, to be a node, it's a lot of work. And you have to have a lot of infrastructure and things like that. So, yeah, there were some ideas about more of a peer-to-peer. Like peer-to-peer means like you're both a node and a user at the same time, but it's lightweight enough that like you would run it on your laptop or whatever, right? So there were some ideas like in the 90s, 2000s on lets do anonymity things like Tor, but it's more peer-to-peer. So you have a bunch of users that are using it, and then you just send your traffic through all the other users. But what they do instead is more of a client-server architecture. So the Tor nodes are like big servers, lots of bandwidth, lots of uptime, and things like that. And then the clients are like laptops and things like that. So that's the sort of the infrastructure model that's used. Other questions?
When we compare Tor with the proxy,
Yeah.
proxy knows the address of the source, but in Tor, the middle node does not know the end, IP address of the source.
Yeah.
So, if I send a request through Tor for some information on them, how will I?
Okay. So first, let me answer your first question. What's the difference between proxy and Tor? If I did Tor with one node, it's more or less a proxy server, right?
But for Tor system, it should be minimum 3 nodes, right?
Exactly,
Otherwise
yeah.
It's not a problem.
Yeah. So you can think about like who knows what if you only have 2 nodes, and it's still not that bad, because like the exit knows the entrance, but they still don't know the user, and the exit knows the entrance. Knows the user, but it doesn't know the website, right? So 3 is sort of a number that's kind of nice, but the minimum would actually be 2. Like you get a big security boost going from 1 to 2, because then nobody knows everything. But then going from 2 to 3 it makes it a little harder, but it doesn't really increase the security. But the other thing you might say is, well, what if I use 3 proxy servers, right? So then you have to think about how the encryption is done. So is it the case that the first proxy knows about the second, the third, and the website? And so what Tor does is basically it's kind of like you take 3 proxy servers, so now you're sending it through 3 instead of 1. But then it also does this they call it a telescoping encryption. So it's sort of like tunnels inside of tunnels. Or it looks like an onion, like layers of an onion. And so it's sometimes called onion routing. And in fact, Tor, the original name is the onion router, although they deny it. They say it's just Tor. It's not that. But anyways, that was the original name. But that way of setting up the encryption, that's also what Tor gives you, whereas a proxy server won't necessarily give it. Or you'd have to try really hard to get your proxy server to do it that way. Yeah. Okay.
Is there any authority who regulates Tor?
So there's a Tor Foundation. So it's the people who develop the software and have the keys to, like the commit keys to the software, basically. So any change that you propose to Tor, it is open source. So you do a pull request or whatever, but they're the ones that are going to sign off on it. So whether it gets signed off on or not. And then they have a board of directors. So there was one board member was actually from Montreal, but she moved to Harvard. She was at McGill. So she's no longer with us in Montreal. But yeah, there's a handful of directors and stuff that oversee it. And so they'll have meetings. I don't know how many people Tor has. There's one, so Roger Dingledine is like the main person who invented it in the was a co-author on the first paper, and he's always been there, and he's like the sort of the constant. And then there's a bunch of other people that work on it. Yeah. And then there's some developers too that are like core contributors to the project, but they're not necessarily paid.
So is that true that it's actually developed for US and for them it's distributed all over?
Yeah. So this is the connection. So there is a connection to the U.S. government, to the Army. Maybe I get this wrong, but I'll tell you what I do know. So before Tor, there was, this is the sort of pedigree of the idea. So there's this guy, David Chaum, and in the 80s, he invents this thing called mixed networks, which is the general idea of sending it through multiple people. He also had this idea that each person would kind of shuffle up the messages that they receive. And then you could prove that you can figure out where things ended up. Mixed networks are fine. They're good for things like emails, where you just have like an occasion, like a message every 15 minutes, and they're all discrete, and it's one-way traffic. It's not. You might have responses, but they're just separate emails. But in like a real-time environment where it's like server client, you send a request, you get a response. It's too much delay to because you have to before you mix, you have to collect a batch, and then you got to mix them. So they wanted something more real time. So they had this idea of onion routing, which uses the same encryption as a mixed network. Like this encryption inside encryption, that's from mixed networks. But it was meant for real-time servers. Okay, so onion routing is invented by a professor named Paul Syverson, and his university is the U.S. Navy Postal, I forget what it's called, but it's basically like in Canada, if you go to Kingston, you have Queen's University and you got the Royal Military College, right? So it's like a university. You can get a degree in computer science, but it's just run by the military, okay? So he's not, I don't think he is military himself. He's just a professor that's at a military school or whatever, yeah? And then there's two people at MIT, Nick Matheson and Roger Dingledine, and they have the idea, basically some improvements to how onion routing works. And so they call it Tor, and they work with Paul, and they release the paper together. So the paper has 3 authors, so 2 MIT people and 1 at the U.S. Naval Institute, or whatever it's called. Yeah, so that's the connection to the Navy. Now, they may have received funding and things like that in the early days, but there's this sort of like people will say, oh, the government designed it or the Army designed it. But it's not really the case. It's just like one of the people that was on the paper was a professor at a Naval Institute. So yeah, so the connection isn't as strong as it's sort of made out to be. Yeah. Okay, one other thing I'll tell you that came back to me is I'll tell you just a story as well. Speaking of MIT, it was Harvard. Okay, so it was final exam time at Harvard University, and one student didn't want to write his exam because he wasn't ready for it, and so he said, I'm going to send a bomb threat to the administration saying there's a bomb on campus. Then they're going to shut down the whole campus, and I won't have to write my exam, right? So that's great. We had a bomb threat actually at Concordia a couple years ago, I remember. That ended up not being, they evacuated the whole building, and I had to leave, but it ended up being a hoax. Anyways, so back to Harvard. Okay, so how do you have a bomb threat, you want to do it, how do you do it? Okay, so the student's a little bit careful. So they say, okay, I'm not going to phone because then they'll have my voice and things like that. I'm going to just email it. Okay, so it's very impersonal. I'll make up an email account. I'll get some like random Gmail account or something like that, and I'll send it in from the random Gmail account. And then because this is actually criminal activity, like you could be charged criminally. It's not just like bad, like it's a bad thing to do. It's like an illegal thing to do. He thought, well, I'm going to obfuscate my IP address, so I'll use Tor. So that's what happened. So Harvard got email sent over Tor, and they and there was a bomb threat in it. Okay, all right. So now you're all security people, right? So the dean of Harvard comes to you and says, okay, you're a security person. We got this email threat. Who did it? So what would you do? How would you investigate it? So the first thing you do is you might look at the email address. You conclude that this is a made-up email address. There's no record of it. You have no idea who it's from. Okay. The second thing you do is you look at the IP address that it's sent from, and you see that it came over Tor. Okay. What's your next move? So you can go to Google and try and compel them to give up the account. I'm saying it's from Gmail. I don't know if that is the case, because Gmail would actually obfuscate the IP address. But somehow they knew it came over Tor. You can try and go to the Tor nodes, but you're a university, you're not police. There's one simple thing that you could at least check. Maybe it works or maybe it doesn't.
Who is using Tor on campus?
Okay, perfect. All right, so you could at least see who's using Tor on campus at that time, the time that the email was sent. Okay. Now, how could that help you? So let's say you see 5 people using Tor at that time. What does that tell you?
Timing.
Yeah. So the timing. What do you conclude? It's not a trick question. There's 10 people that are on Tor at the time that the email was sent.
So check that device.
Okay, but you're leaping to the thing. It's one of those 10 people, right? Is it though? It could be one of those 10 people. Okay, so why wouldn't it be? Why would or wouldn't it be? So who else could it be?
Someone who's not on campus.
Okay. So it could be emailed from off campus, right? And then you're not going to see anybody, you're not going to see them on your server logs, okay? But if it were sent from on campus, then it would be one of these 10 people, okay? So that's your conclusion. So your conclusion is, okay, off campus, I don't know who it is. On campus, I've narrowed it down to these 10 people, okay? So this is an important point when it comes to anonymity, is we talk about anonymity in a set. So what does it mean to be anonymous? Like someone writes a novel and novel comes out, there's a ghost name on the novel, who wrote it, okay? Did Shakespeare write that novel? No, he's dead, right? So you know it's at least not him, right? Okay? So you can't say it could literally be anyone. No, it can't literally be anyone, right? They have to at least be alive, right? They probably wrote a novel before, or they know how to write novels. They're probably of a certain age. They're probably not a 3-year-old, okay? And so what you're doing is you're sort of narrowing the circle, okay? So that circle that you're narrowing, we call that the anonymity set. So what anonymity actually means is you're anonymous within a set of other individuals that could have done the same thing, okay? So I don't know who did it, but I know it was one of these sets of people, okay? And the bigger your anonymity set, if your anonymity set is every living human alive or dead, that's a big anonymity set. You probably won't do better than that, right? If it's every living human today, right, that's a big anonymity set. If it's one of the 10 people that was on tour at that time, not a big anonymity set, but still pretty big, right? Okay, so what happened in this case is they went to the server logs, and it turned out that there was one user on tour at the time that the email was sent, just one, okay? So this user does not have an anonymity set, at least of it, okay? Now, is that proof that this user did it? No, because it could have been someone from outside of the campus, okay? But it looks like pretty compelling evidence, okay? The probability that they did it is going up because of this evidence, okay? It's not going all the way to 100%, but it's definitely going up, right? So then what they do is they pull the student in, they interview him, and then he's like, and it's he, I keep saying he, but because I know it's actually a he, and he's really flustered and intimidated, and he says, yeah, I did it, okay? So anyway, so that's technically a global adversary, okay? Harvard received the email, okay, so they're on the exit end of it, and they're the ISP, so they can see who was sending traffic into Tor at that particular time, okay? And so they were a global adversary. They were able to fingerprint, not at the packet level, but they were able to fingerprint that this person was putting stuff into Tor and this email was coming out of Tor around the same time. And and anyways, that was enough to at least get a confession out of the student. It's an application. It's both, I guess you could say. So it is implemented, and I'll show you the actual software. And yeah. Okay. So that's Tor. Any other questions or things about Tor? Okay. So now I'll tell you what we're going to do for the cognitive walkthrough. Then we'll take a break, and I'll get everything installed and things so that we can actually do it. Okay, so back to usability. So we want to analyze Tor. First thing is, the reason I picked Tor is when I was your age, I was doing my master's. I did Tor usability study as a cognitive walkthrough of Tor as my class project when I took a class in graduate school. And so that's why I'm using this example. Now, what's interesting about it is Tor's changed completely. Okay, it's gotten way better in terms of usability. So if you want to see like an academic level of a cognitive walkthrough, you can look at the paper. I'm going to take out the core tasks and the heuristics from the paper. So that's what we'll use itself for the thing that we do in class. Okay, so the core tasks, they're actually a slight simplification of it. But for the sake of this class, We'll keep it simple. We'll just do 3 things. So we're going to get Tor. We're going to install it like from scratch. Make sure we get it right, the right one, and make sure we install it right and all that type of thing. Okay, so that's the first thing the user will do. Then the user wants to use it, right? And they want to make sure that they're anonymous when they're using it. Okay, so that will be the second thing we consider. Can the user actually go to Google and have it be anonymous? Are they able to complete that core task? Okay. And then the third thing is that you want to turn it off. Okay, so are you able to turn it off? And you could think of other core tasks, but anyway, these are a good 3 to just do in class. Okay, so we have our core tasks. Okay, so remember, we're a dual expert, so we're an expert in Tor now. Okay, so everyone here, we all know Tor, how it works. We have our core tasks. Okay, what else do we need to do the cognitive walkthrough? Anyone remember? So we'll do the software itself, but before we start, there's one other thing that we need. So the dual expert is we're an expert in Tor, and then the other side is we're an expert in usability. Okay, so we have our core tasks. We know we're doing a cognitive walkthrough. We have our core tasks. What's going to give us that usability expertise? Okay, so what we need is we need some usability guidelines, right? If we just started now, what would we actually say? Oh, yeah, I used it, it was okay, right? So we want to say something a little more formal than that, okay? So the way we formalize that step is we say, let's write down 10 things that good they're not Tor specific, okay? But 10 things that all usable software, maybe with a privacy or security side to it, that they should exhibit, okay? We'll write those 10 things down, and then that's what we're going to be like sort of grading. So it's like a grading criteria for it, okay? Okay, so these are the guidelines that we came up with that weren't original from us. We just drew it from the academic literature. It's the guidelines that we used in the paper that we didn't invent out of thin air, that have been well used before. And these guidelines you can use in your assignment, okay? So in your assignment, the core tasks, actually these ones like more or less work. Like you can go out and get it and install it, make sure that it's working, make sure you can get rid of it, right? But then you'll have other core tasks that are specific to the software you're looking at, which is not Tor. But the guidelines you can just use because they're just general guidelines for any software. Okay, so users should be aware of the steps they have to perform to complete a core task, okay? So I know I want to go to Google and I want to be anonymous. So first off, I have to figure out what do I have to do, okay? So I should be aware of that. And if I'm not aware of it, the software should guide me somehow, okay? So I should know what it is that I'm trying to accomplish. Then I should also know how to do it. How do I determine, like once I know what I want to do, I have to determine the steps in order to do it, okay? So the software is going to help me figure out, okay, what do I actually have to do in order to accomplish this core task? And then at a certain point, I'll be done, right? I've done it and it's working or whatever. And it sounds obvious, but I should know that I'm done, right? It might be that I did all the steps and it's working, but I still don't know it. I still feel like, well, there's some other step that I have to do, but it's actually working now, okay? So there should be some sense that, okay, now this is complete. I can move on to the next core task. I should make mistakes, okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to break mistakes into 2 types. So there's a mistake that I can recover from. So G4 is users should be able to recognize and diagnose and recover from non-critical errors. And G5 will be I shouldn't make errors that I can't recover from. Okay, so a dangerous error is what we call it. And so we'll just split them out. Another thing that we look at is if we're reading stuff or we're looking at icons or we're looking at, like if we hover our icon and there's a label for it, all of that should be understandable. So a user should know what it is. It shouldn't use a lot of jargon. If it's talking about IP addresses and SOCKS proxies and things like that, then it's not, normal users aren't going to be able to use the software or use it correctly. You should be sufficiently comfortable with the interface to continue using it. So this is like more of a general thing, but if there's weird things about the interface, it's non-intuitive, things are buried, it's hard to find them, then you might dock it on this criteria. It might fall under G2 or G3, or it might fall under G7. And it's not like, if you find something that's wrong with the software from a usability perspective, it's not like, and you're like, is this G3 or is this G7? Like, it doesn't matter. Like these are guidelines, they're rough guidelines. Like, just make sure that you denote it somehow. Or you might say it's both G3 and G7. Like, it's putting it in exactly the right category isn't super important. It's more that you identify that there's a problem. And then the last one is that users should be aware of the application status at all times. So what that means is like for Tor, is it on? I should know it's on. Is it off? I should know it's off. Is it connecting? I should know it's connecting. So I should know kind of where it's at all times, okay? So it's sort of related to, I know that I completed a core task, but this might be in the middle of a core task. I just want to know what that status is, okay? So good software, they continually show it to you, so you have a sense of what the status is at all times, okay? So these are all things that probably no one disagrees with, right? No one thinks that, oh, like, no, software should do the opposite of any of these, right? Okay, so they're all pretty sensible, reasonable guidelines. And so now what we'll do is we'll do the actual cognitive walkthrough. So we'll go step by step, and at every step we just ask ourselves, do we see a violation of any of these 8 guidelines? If we do, we write it down. We might see the opposite. We might say, oh, this is like, I don't know, I would have a hard time explaining this in a way without using jargon, but somehow they're able to explain it in a really simple way. And then you might say, this does really good on G6 instead of, so your comments don't all have to be negative, right? So if you don't say anything, then it's just sort of, it's neutral, right? And if they do a really good job on the guidelines, you can denote it. And if they do a really bad job, you can denote it. Now, you don't have to go through all 8 at every step. Like I clicked on this is the window. Now let me tell you about G1, G2, G3, G4. You don't have to do that, okay? You only bring them in as they become relevant, right? So if you see nothing on that screen, you might say, okay, all guidelines look good, and then you go on to the next step, and then there might be a problem with G2. You don't have to talk about the others, okay? So if you're not talking about something, it's just assumed. The default is that there isn't an issue there, okay? So you don't have to explicitly say that there's no issue all the way through the report. You say when there is an issue, or if you want to praise it, you can do that as well. Okay, is that reasonably clear? Okay, so let's take a 10-minute break, and then we'll come back at 5 after. Okay, so two things about Tor I want to say that I forgot to. Well, one I forgot to, and one question I want to ask you. Okay, so the first thing is someone mentioned speed. So this is actually interesting. So because you're going through 3 nodes, is it going to be slower? Yeah, of course, right? It's going to be, and in some cases it might be painfully slow, okay? Now, there's, I forget the exact terms, but network people, they talk about latency versus bandwidth, okay? And there's even another term, I can't,
Bottleneck?
maybe, sorry, which?
Bottleneck problem.
Maybe, no, or that's not the one I'm thinking of. Anyways, I'll just explain it to you. Okay, so you might say, okay, this is low latency. So let's say you're worried about copyright infringement. You want to download a movie, and you're like, I'm going to download it through Tor, because that's going to protect my IP address, okay? Now you're going through 3 hops, it's going to add latency. So is it really stupid to try and download a movie over Tor? For just performance reasons. Okay, so you might think because of the latency it is, okay? But what happens is that like you request the movie and there's a delay, right? So there's a delay of whatever, 5 seconds before they get the request, okay? They send the first chunk of the movie, there's a delay and it's 5 seconds before you get that next chunk, okay? They send the second chunk of the movie, okay? How much delay before you get the second chunk from when you got the first chunk? Okay, is it going to be another 5 seconds? No, because what will happen is they'll send the first chunk and the second one right after it. There'll be a 5-second delay before you get that first chunk, but you will get the second chunk right after it, okay? So you still have that same bandwidth, right? So you're getting the movie as fast, like they're giving it to you at a certain speed, and you're actually getting it at that speed. There's just a delay before you start receiving it, okay? But then once you start receiving it, then you're still getting it at the same speed, okay? So that's like what the delay is. So I guess that's latency versus bandwidth. But anyways, Tor could also have lower bandwidth just because these nodes are load balancing lots of users. So they might not be able to devote enough bandwidth to you. So I'm not saying that you wouldn't necessarily have bandwidth problems, but the main problem you have is just with that delay, okay? So it's not the rate at which you get information after you wait that initial delay, it's just that initial delay itself. So if you're doing a lot of like protocols that involve a lot back and forth and those types of things, that's where it's going to suffer. If you're doing like a big pipe of data from one person to the other, then that's not so much the problem with Tor, okay? Okay. So we're going to download Tor. Now, some of you have probably used Tor, okay? So this is a question for people who haven't, that don't know anything. You didn't know what Tor was. You might have heard about it, but you didn't really know what it is. What we're going to do now is we're going to do the cognitive walkthrough. So we're going to do the first step, which is go out and get it and install it. My question to you is, what is it? What are we getting exactly?
Software.
So we're getting some software, so it is going to be software. So what is it? What does it look like? Like, how does it work?
Install it.
Okay, so we're going to install it. Let's say like whatever the package is like, blah, 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 and then it's like, okay, it's installed. Now what?
Open it.
Okay, so is it its own application? Is it more like a tool that I'm like going to plug into, like I don't know. Let's say I want to go to Google. Okay, I want to go to Google anonymously. What do I use to go to Google, just in general? I use a browser. Okay. So what's Tor's relationship to my browser? This is maybe a better way of putting it.
So give me a browser that can stimulate simulate the TLS protocol like you.
Okay, so it could be, so I heard two answers. So answer one is, it's some tool that's sitting, like maybe I open it and it's like a VPN, right? It's like, okay, you're connected to Tor, and then now I just start using my browser and all the information. Somehow my operating system moves it to the VPN and then it goes out, so it just moves it to Tor and goes out, okay? So that's one answer. Another answer is that Tor just gives you a browser, okay? So is that possible?
Tor gives you. There is a Tor browser.
Okay. Once again, this is a question for people who don't know the answer, but sorry? Yeah, so that could be an option, right? And so in that case, so the thing is, I would just I'm installing a browser and then I use it, right? Now let's say I have this browser installed and I'm using it and then I start using Safari. Is Safari anonymous?
No.
Okay, so it's just everything in the browser. Yeah.
Information on the Tor network. Not the browser is just a browser with a special capability.
Okay. So it could be, but they're still giving you, like, is it a new browser? Like I'm opening Tor, the application, and it's a browser? Or am I opening Tor, an application that's running in the background, and I'm using Safari, which is my browser, to talk to Tor?
It's a new browser.
Okay. So people like the new browser. Now, which let's say that both are possible. Which do you think would be more usable for users? Probably the browser itself, right? Because then you don't have to do any configuration and things like that. Okay, so the people who have used Tor, which is the true case, if anyone has?
If you are using an other web browser to access the Tor, then that other web browser might have our logs. But if you are using Tor as a web browser, then vulnerabilities come.
Sure. So that's another difference between it. Yeah. So one thing that let me. I'm taking some to-do notes. I'll come back to that point in a second. But anyways, let's go back to the question. Okay, so has anyone actually used Tor? It's okay. Okay, and what is it a browser or is it a service that you plug your browser into?
It's a browser. You can get both
Okay.
of them.
All right. So technically, yeah. Okay. So basically, it's a browser. The user, like right now, we're going to go and we're going to try and download Tor, and we're going to get a browser itself. Okay. So I want you to have the right mental model. Yeah.
I don't know what the difference between torrents
Yep. Okay, so torrent, just the name is the same. Like they both start with TOR. But literally beside that, there's no difference, or there's no similarity at all. So torrents is like for file sharing. It's just a super efficient way to like download from multiple people who have copy of the same data. It's also used a lot for pirating, like movies and music. And so sometimes you want anonymity when you do it. So sometimes people use Tor and torrents together. But torrents themselves is just, BitTorrent's a protocol for file sharing, and then Tor is a protocol for anonymity. Yeah. And some of the same people are involved in both projects as well. Yeah. Okay, yeah, so when we go, you'll see what we're going to get is a browser. Okay, so I want you to have that mental model going into it. What we're expecting is like its own contained browser. Now, it wasn't always this way. So if you go back and read my report from when I wrote it, 10 plus years ago, it worked the other way. It was this thing that was running, and then you had to configure your browser to point at it, okay? And that option does still exist today. So it's actually both. So if you want that style of Tor, you can do it. And it's important because what if you want to send an email over Tor? Okay, if you're using Gmail, that's fine. You open it in the Tor browser, it's going over Tor. But I don't use Gmail, I use Apple's mail client. Is that going over Tor? It's not, right? Because Tor is the browser itself, right? So they do offer like a package as well that is like a Tor thing that you can point applications at, okay? Now, which is more usable? I guess that was my question. And so the Tor browser is more usable. So that was actually our finding back then, is we recommended that they should make it a browser, just give the user a self-contained browser, and it would be way more usable than having them, because it was a real pain. One of the problems too is that DNS lookups is not covered by what your browser does. So your DNS lookup goes through a different path than all the traffic flowing out of your browser. So you can get your browser pointed at Tor, that's fine, but then you go do a DNS lookup, and then all of a sudden that goes out not over Tor, right? So anyway, that's there's some complexities there. Okay, so let's, without further ado, let's find Tor. Okay, so how do we do it? We want to download Tor, what do we do? Google it? Okay, sounds good. Okay, so I've heard of this thing called Tor. I don't know anything about what I'm looking for, so I'm just going to type it in. Okay, now in past I would take screenshots and paste it in the notes, but now I'm not doing notes, and so I'm just going to say stuff, and people who aren't here in the classroom will have to watch the video to sort of follow along. But anyways, okay. Okay, so the first thing I see here is the Tor project, so that's the #1 result. So I'm probably pretty sure that this is where I want to go. Is the #1 result always what you're looking for? No? Really? Let's see. Let's try, I don't know, Bitcoin. In this case, it actually worked. Anyways, yeah. So there's many times where what would the #1 result be if it's not what you're actually looking for? Yeah, but sorry, how would it become the first result? I mean, the first result should be the one that has the most links to it, or however Google determines the ranking, right? Okay, so it would be ads, right? So, and do advertisers or do fraudsters ever like put ads, like it might put a fake Tor and try and get it placed on top of the real Tor? All the time, right? Okay, so anyways, this isn't really Tor's problem, but it's one thing to keep in mind. So if you go downloading software, your first hit isn't necessarily your first real hit is probably the real project, but if there's stuff above it that's marked as ads, it might not be. Okay, so I see download Tor here, but we'll just go to the homepage for now. And so you can see here, browse privately, explore freely, defend yourself against tracking and surveillance, circumvent censorship, download Tor browser. Okay, so I don't know that any user would do anything other than this. Okay, so the user knows, just to go back to the guidelines, they know the step that they have to perform is they want to download Tor. How do they do it? Well, they at least know the next step is I got to click on this button. Okay, so we're doing so far so good. All right, so then it's going to ask me what I want to download it for. So I'm on Apple, so I'm going to download this. Now I'm going to tell jokes, really bad jokes, for the next 20 minutes while we wait for it to download. No, actually, it's going pretty fast. Okay, so that was pretty painless. So now we have the application. Once again, this isn't a Tor thing. They couldn't do anything different if they wanted to. This is just an Apple thing. Now this is Tor, so Tor decided what this looks like. How do I actually install this? Anyone who is a Windows user, answer this question first. Any Windows users? How do I install it? Should I double click on this? Okay, so I can double click on this and it will actually open, but it's not installed. Okay, so this is an Apple thing, so I'm supposed to actually drag it. That's why that arrow's there to here. Okay, and then now it's actually doing the process of copying it onto my computer. Okay, which is what you could think of as installing. But anyways, that's so you could say, oh, they could make this more obvious, but if you've used Apple enough, you know, like, almost all software you install this way, and so that's fine. I wouldn't criticize them on this necessarily. Okay, so now I have it installed. I'll close this. I'll get rid of this thing, another Apple thing. Okay, so I have it here. So you can notice it's called Tor browser. So I'm expecting a browser at the end of the day. So that's what I'm going to get. So I'll double click on it. Okay, oops, what's this say? Tor browser is an app downloaded from the internet. Are you sure you want to open it? Safari downloaded this file today. Apple checked it for malicious software and none was detected. Okay, so that seems pretty safe, right, to open. Is there anything, maybe this is a usability thing, right? You might say, okay, this isn't under Tor's control. So this prompt that we're seeing right here, who made this prompt? Who wrote the text that's in this prompt? Did Tor write it? No, the operating system, so Apple wrote it. Okay, so Tor can't really do anything about what's being written here. So this is an operating system thing. So in a cognitive walkthrough, if you said, you might say, oh, this has a lot of jargon, right? I think it's actually written fairly well. But you might say, okay, G6 is about terminology and jargon. So you might make a comment about it. Okay. Now, let me ask another question. Is there anything that Tor could do so that this doesn't pop up? Okay. So the only reason this has popped up is because the Tor project didn't put their key into the Apple ecosystem. So if they distribute it through the App Store or something like that, then it would show up. And that's actually, I'm glad I thought of that. So at the very, very start, the first step is, we're still doing it, is get Tor and install it. Okay. Now I said, how am I going to find Tor? And I did the bad thing of having the browser open, and so everyone's like, Google it. Okay, so that's reasonable. But I kind of prompted that response to you. Let's say that I'm a just novice Apple user. Is there anything else that I might try besides Googling it? The App Store. Okay, so that's kind of like maybe a wrong path down it. Okay, so when you do a cognitive walkthrough, you actually are supposed to explore every path. Okay, so you don't just go down the path that you know is going to lead you to the right answer. You want to explore all the wrong paths, and you want to make sure that users aren't going to get stuck on the wrong path. Okay, so what we can do it now or later, but let's do it now while it's fresh on our minds. I'm going to open the App Store, and let's just see there's the potential for a dangerous error. right? A dangerous error would be that there's something there that's saying it's Tor, and it looks close enough to it that users might actually install it, and once they install it, then you can debate about whether you can recover from it, because you can always uninstall it. But if you install it and think it's Tor and start using it, then you could commit dangerous errors of going to websites that you think are where you're anonymized and you're not. Okay. Okay. So what you can see is a lot of things that look like Tor. I don't know if you caught it because we weren't on the website very long, but you can see that I mentioned that the protocol is called onion routing. So an onion is sort of their logo or whatever, okay? And purple is like a color that they use. So purple onions, that's kind of like the visual brand of Tor. And so you can see like, here's a purple onion, right? The very first thing, some other purple onions. These people call themselves Tor Project, which is the exact name of Tor. So the URL you can see is Tor Project. Okay, so this is an actual problem, okay? I don't know what Tor themselves could do about this. Maybe nothing, okay? But it would be something I would note in a cognitive walkthrough, is that the user, maybe they go to the App Store, maybe they go to Google. If they go to Google, they're probably going to get the right software. It's in the first result. But if they end up going to the App Store instead, they see a bunch of things that look like Tor that are not Tor, and who knows what they do when you install them, okay? I mean, the worst case is that they just cost money and then they actually go out over Tor anyways. But the best case is that. The worst case would be that they actually like try and steal your information. Okay, and then you can try and ask yourself about what criteria. So Tor, there is actually one thing. What's the one thing that Tor could do to prevent that, or at least mitigate it, is they could actually put it in the App Store themselves, okay? I assume they don't because they have, maybe Apple won't let them, or maybe they have like philosophical differences with Apple as a company or something like that. I'm sure that the reason has something to do with that for why they don't actually do it. But that would be the one action they could take. But anyways, it's more like the user knows that they have to get Tor, but they went to the wrong place, so they did it the wrong way, okay? And so that would be a failure of G2. And then the result of it would be a dangerous error. I would call it a dangerous error, because even though you can uninstall the software, if you've used it in the meantime, you can't get back what you did with the software. Okay. All right, so let's go back to the real Tor. So we have this little thing. So I'm going to open the software now. Okay. So in terms of core tasks, I would say that I've sort of completed the first core task. The core task was to get it, and I guess I said get it and configure it. So we got it, it's open. Do I have to configure it still? It kind of looks like it, right? Like there's some dialogues and things. So we'll go through this stuff. I mean, it says configure connection, so I guess there's some configuration to do. Okay, so it says, well, let's just look at the browser. So my eye falls to the middle part here. My eye falls right on that purple connect button. I really want to press it, right? Like it's just tempting me to press it. But there is some other stuff. So there's this Tor browser thing here. The tab is called Connect to Tor. So I'm thinking I'm not connected yet. Seem reasonable. If it's not, there's also not connected here. The Tor browser has displayed your language to English, so I check that. I'm like, okay, that seems okay. I can dismiss that. Okay, so connect to Tor. Tor browser routes your traffic over the Tor network, run by thousands of volunteers around the world. Okay, so that's what Tor does. The only usability thing we can think about is I need to do some action in response to this. So there's, do I know what it is? And the other thing that comes to mind is the terminology and things that are used. Is that like something that most people you think would understand, or is that like full of technical jargon? Okay, who thinks technical jargon? Okay.
Most of the people, normal people, ordinary people use it.
Yep. Okay, okay. And some people think it's not technical. So yeah, so you can go either way. So in your report, you can say either. I happen to think this is actually pretty good. I can at least, I've seen the Tor software actually improves almost every semester. I think I have a conspiracy theory that they watch these videos and then they change them in response. But this back in the day, this was like really terrible messaging. So I'd say that this is pretty good. But you're right. Like they don't talk about nodes, for example. They don't talk about. I mean, the Tor network is a brand name, I guess, so it's capitalized. But anyways, to me, it seems okay. Okay, so I have two options here. I can connect. I really want to press it. I can configure. Since we're doing a walkthrough, let's just take a look and see what the configure says. Okay. So changes to Tor settings will not take effect until you connect, and then there's a connect button. So that's interesting because that's trying to display the status. So first off, they're telling you you're not connected, and then it's also telling you when those changes are going to take place. Okay, so that's something new. I haven't seen that dialogue before, but it helps with being aware of the application status at all times, so they know when it's going to kick in. Okay. Anyways, now it kind of drops into more jargony stuff. So this text is the same. There's an internet Tor network not connected. Okay, so they're really reinforcing that idea that it's not connected. I can press this test button. It says I'm online. Okay, so that's good. Quick start is just a default setting, so we can do it. There's these bridges. So I mentioned the bridges are like where you want to get a node that's not listed in the directory. Okay, and so this is usually used for anti-censorship. If like say someone gave you a bridge, I guess it comes in the form of address port, but anyways, you can just sort of type it in, and this is how you would configure it. And if you want a bridge, you can request it. And I don't know how this works. I guess they don't list it, but the government could probably sit there and press the button a bunch of times and write down what they see. I don't actually really know the whole logistics behind it. Then there's some other settings. So there's some logs that's just jargony stuff, and there's some proxy settings and firewalls, but let's just ignore that. Okay, so I'm going to go back. Notice this popped up in a new tab too. So if I want to go back, it's already there. So are we ready to connect? Finally, okay. Okay, so right now it's establishing a connection, so we'll just give it a bit of time because Tor is really slow, right? Yeah? Okay, one other thing I'll note that I really like that absolutely was not there last term is that there's this thing says connecting here, okay? Last term it was exactly the same, but they didn't have this. There is this bar here. I don't know if you noticed when I pressed it, but it was really small, and then it got a little bit bigger. And so this is actually meant to be a progress bar. So it will go further and further as we establish our connection. So I like that. Sorry, I didn't like this because it went to the first jump really quickly. Now it's hanging, and it just looks like part of the UI. Like it just looks like, that doesn't look like a progress bar. I know it like would be ugly to make it look like a progress bar, right? It wouldn't be as cool. This is like cool, and it's like glossy and things like that. But right now it just looks like some, like there's these weird circles in the background and things like that. It just looks like kind of part of the visual feel of the software. It doesn't look like this is actually serving this is an actual visual cue. Okay? All right, how long should we wait, by the way?
We cannot connect from
Okay, all right. So let me ask the question though, keeping that in mind. How long should we wait? How long does this take?
Because there is no permission.
Depends on our
Okay.
Estimation time.
Exactly. So this is one thing. So maybe I know about Tor and I know it's slow. So I'm sitting here thinking, okay, maybe I gotta wait longer, right? Is this normal? That's my question. Like, is this normal? We've been waiting, what, like a couple minutes now. Is this just normal for Tor, or is there actually something wrong?
Should it be for a browser? Should it be
Okay, okay. So people are saying it's not normal. Okay, and that is the correct answer. The reason why is because Concordia doesn't let you connect to Tor. Okay, so it's banned. Now you're thinking, how are we going to do the walkthrough? But don't worry, I have a solution to that. But anyway, so that's why it's hanging. Okay, but what I don't like about this from a usability perspective is I don't know that that's the problem. Okay, they could say, hey, first off, they could have a timeout, right? Maybe if we wait 20 minutes, there is a timeout. I don't know. But the timeout, I think there is none. But if there was one, then they could time out sooner. And they certainly know like why it's halted, right? They know like I'm trying to hit this directory node or whatever IP and I can't get through. Okay, so there's no technical reason that the software right now can know what's going on. Yeah. Yours is connected. So are you on Concordia?
Yes.
And which Wi-Fi network are you on? Okay, so it might be, I don't know why that's the case. I know it's a network level problem because I'm going to circumvent it at the network level. But maybe because is that an iPad or a MacBook? Same as mine? That's strange. But maybe it's a student account versus faculty account. I don't know.
It's the employer.
And you're not going through a VPN or anything else? Okay.
For IIT, so I'm using those credentials.
Oh, I see. You're on IITS. Yeah, got it. Okay, so we can plug your laptop in if we have trouble. No. I'll get around it. Okay, how can I get around this? This isn't Tor's problem, but just
I don't know.
okay. I have two ideas to get around it.
Proxy.
Use a bridge.
Okay, so I can go install things, proxies, and things like that. I'm too lazy. I don't want to like install a million things.
Use a toll bridge.
Okay, so I could actually use that bridge function, right? So this actually would be a good test of the bridge, okay? Now, if they're blocking me from accessing Tor, could they also block me from getting a bridge? Because I do have to go to Tor and ask me to get a bridge, right? So these are things you can think about, okay? We'll see what happens. So that's the first thing I'll try. The other thing I can do is I'll just tether through my phone, okay? Then I'll be on the phone network instead.
Can you try Eduroam first?
Yeah.
Sorry?
Actually, I'm not going to because but it's an interesting question. Yeah, we could do it. Let me do it at the very end. Remind me at the very end. Yeah.
One of the, firewall may ban your traffic because of IP, and then if you change it, you can do it. But maybe they can find the traffic type that it's stored, and based on the traffic type, they make the filter, not based on IP or.
Right. Yeah. So that's interesting. Yeah. So they do both. Both are possible. So at a packet sniffing level, you can go based on IP address. If there's some encryption or things like that, then you could try and fingerprint it. Okay. Now we actually waited long enough. So I haven't seen this screen before. So this is new, but it did actually time out. Okay, so it eventually timed out. So they added this. My recommendation is that it should have timed out like. So if anyone from Tor is watching this video, time out a little earlier. But otherwise, this is good. Tor browser could not connect to Tor. Okay, that's fine. If Tor is blocked in your location, so that's exactly what's happening, right? Trying a bridge may help. That was the suggestion. Okay. Connection assist can help choose one for you using your location, or you can configure your connection manually instead. Okay. So this error message, like, I think it's pretty good. There's not a lot of jargon. It tries to put it in plain language. It gives me the option. I don't have to go back to that other screen and find the bridge settings and things like that. Like there's a button. There's a purple button. I really want to click it. It's purple. So let's try it and see. All right. So now we're in the same situation. Is this just slow, or is it blocked?
They can put a lock beside that. You can see real-time status.
Yeah. Exactly. So they could reflect that better, for sure.
So they're doing it on their phone version. Why not they are using on their browser?
They do it on the phone version? Okay. Yeah, I,
Put a
did,
lock.
I see. I don't know.
How can you block Tor because it uses some special frames?
Just based on IP address, I think.
Okay, so there's a list of Tor servers.
Yeah, yeah, if you remember from the slides, the very first thing you do is you go to the Tor directory. So they're probably actually just blocking it at this stage here. Now, if they're really like ambitious, they could download the directory itself and ban all the nodes. So that would be like the next level of blocking, but the simplest thing would be just to block it here. And then since I'm asking for a bridge, I'm probably asking from the same server, so it's probably not working for the same reason. We can see they had a few other options for bridges. So you can see there's a bunch of countries here. So let's ask for a bridge in Canada. But I think the problem is me getting the bridge. It's not. That's more of a question of like, okay, which bridge do you want, right? So that's like the response that I would get. But I can't even ask the question to get the list of bridges. Okay, so I'm going to give up on this. Okay, I don't know if I assume that if we waited another 5 minutes, it might go back to that error screen, but I'll give up on it. Okay, so let's go back. So the dialogue's a little bit different. Try again. But anyways, okay. So now I'm going to switch. I'll go to my phone because I know for a fact it will work, and then later we'll try Edge or Roam. I just have to remember how to log in to it. That's the main problem. Okay, so now I'm going through my phone, so we'll try again. So now you can see the progress bar is going a little further. On reading week, we went to a cottage and there was no internet, and I have a data plan that I share with my family, and so everyone just used their phones. And so I got a message actually today saying I reached my cap, and now they're going to like rate limit me, so it's really slow, my phone now, for the next 2 days until the billing cycle is over. So I hope this works, but it's at least we're making some forward progress here. Okay, so we got a try again error. So I'll just do that, try again. If this doesn't work, then I'm actually not sure what I'll do. I'll try Edge or Roam.
I used the page and connected using it to do my
And it did work? Okay. Use other which? Oh yeah, I could use someone else's phone if someone wants to do that. We'll try Edge or Roam. So I find Edge or Roam is really spotty like it. But anyways, let's. I'm just going to quit it and try it again. The Jonathans? Okay. So Edge or Roam's not working. It might be that you have credentials again. But anyway. All right, everyone jump on Jonathan's phone. Let me see. It didn't work for a second. I'm going to go back. Okay, I'll try your phone. If this works, you get a bonus 5 marks on your. You can airdrop it.
Directly and send it
Yeah,
to
that's why I'm just
people.
trying to calculate. No, it's not like I don't want to tell you my password. I just can't tell you.
Yeah. I know.
You
They
can
give the
also-
big
yeah,
long ones.
yeah.
But you can change it. But, okay.
I Professor, I did. Okay. Oh, they can't see anyway.
Sure.
Oh, Professor.
Yeah, exactly. So we can it is possible.
It's okay. You only got the first 4 bytes.
So now word list is narrowed.
So how much did that reduce the entropy
Just
of the password?
impossible is impossible. It was 16, yeah.
Can I show it?
Go for it.
I just into a capital.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
No worries.
And we'll see if this works though. So. Yeah, usually it's instant, like it just. But, okay, now it's working. So thank you. 1 grade level. Just kidding. I'm just kidding. Everyone's great math. I'm just joking. Just joking. Okay. Okay. All right. So now at least we pressed the button and something happened. Okay. Okay. So let's just look at this. So search with DuckDuckGo or enter address. New to Tor. Let's get started. Tor browser, view change log, explore privately. You're ready for the world's most private browsing experience. Search with DuckDuckGo. Tor is free. You can donate, questions, get the news from Tor. Okay. All right, so I'm going to search whatever. Now that's not my IP address now. I'll put in something. Okay, so I'm going to hit enter. So my question to you is, was that anonymous? I mean, I'm using Tor, but was it or wasn't it?
Yes.
It was? Oh, you're sure?
In terms of browser, it's not, but it's going to the Tor network. So in terms of network, it's
Okay. So this is one thing where I actually like that they were like not connected, like, but then once we connected, like it doesn't tell you anything at all, right? So I would really like to see like something that very clearly says that I'm connected or you are now anonymous or something like that. So the answer to the question is yes, we are anonymous now, okay? But you wouldn't know it necessarily from the interface. Yeah.
I think before the default page used to check the Tor network and they would say well now.
I see, it would show your circuit and things like that. Okay. Now, let me flip it back. So I'm really paranoid, so I actually want to make sure that I'm connected. So I know I'm not seeing it, but I mean, there's stuff I can click on, there's menus and things like that. Would there be a way for me to discover it if I really wanted to?
What is my
Okay, so this is the kind of cognitive walkthrough. So you could say, well, the user might say, what is my IP address? So first off, notice that Google or DuckDuckGo thinks I'm in the Netherlands. Okay, so that's a good sign. So I'm in Nepal, according to the map. Okay, I mean, they show me a map with Nepal, so yeah, it's good evidence, but yeah, okay. So now some users might do that, right? They might do that step. They might see that IP address. That page could have said you're on Tor or something like that. It'd be good if Tor gave that page itself. And what would be even better is if the browser, like I could do the equivalent within the browser itself, okay? Now, the answer is that I actually can, okay? So there's an alternative to doing this approach within the browser itself. It's just we have to go find it, okay? So let's do that. So where could we look? So I'm promising you that there is a way to tell that I'm connected to Tor, but I'm not telling you where it is. So where do you think it is? Okay, so let's go. I'll just show you everything. Okay, so we have this. Well, you can just look at it as I go through. Okay, so settings was the consensus. Okay, so I can make my theme darker, lighter. It is actually looking kind of dark. Okay, so connection. So connect. Now remember, one thing just for interest is I did press that button and it did say you're connected before this whole internet sharing Jonathan's phone thing. Okay, so so this thing doesn't mean anything about Tor. Okay, it does say Tor network connected here. Okay, so that's a pretty obscure place to go find it. Like I had to go to settings, and then I had to go to connection, and then even here it's like, you know, it's not like out in front, right? It's like kind of it's beside an internet connection thing. You know, it's not the easiest way to see it. Okay. Did anyone see anywhere else that it might be? Like, there's always the chance that the software puts it in twice. So I didn't see anything going through the menu. Okay. There's one other thing that we can look at, which is the interface here. So I have the back button. What does that do? It's stupid, but just say it. Goes back, forward. What's this X do? Okay, so it stops loading the page. I can refresh it. What does the lock do? Okay, so it's about SSL, TLS, certificates, stuff like that. There's this thing. What's this? Okay, so that's good. So these are like, what you're actually looking at is Firefox. And then they put a couple extra extensions and stuff on. Things like that. But anyways, this isn't telling us anything about Tor. We can come back to this after. What's this? Bookmark. What's this? Security level. That's interesting. So yeah, so okay, so this is another Firefox setting for things, not Tor specific. This. Okay, so this is actually a Tor button. It says new identity. What do you think happens if I click it? Okay, it's going to tore down my address and change it. So let's play with that. That could actually be a core task. I should include that. I didn't include it, but a core task could be like refresh your IP, like kind of thing. And then there's an application menu. And now this looks promising. So you can see that there are some Tor stuff, okay? So there's a new identity and a new Tor circuit. I'm not necessarily sure what the difference between those two are. I don't think it would be asking me for a new circuit if I wasn't connected, right? But still, I still don't see that like real confirmation that I'm connected, right? Yeah, okay, so thank you. That's where I'm going. Okay, now the answer is there is an answer somewhere, okay? Now this is a flaw in my opinion, but it actually, you can see it if you click on the lock. So we skip past the lock because I know the lock is SSL information. Now you might argue that a normal user, they think a lock means security. And so whether they're connected to Tor or not, that might actually be a natural place to look, okay? So this is one where actually novice users might do better than expert users because expert users just are like, I already know what happens if I click it. But if you click it in Tor, it's different than if you click it in any other browser. So when I click it in Tor, it actually is going to show me the Tor information. It's not going to show me well, it will show me the SSL as well. So you can see site information for this IP address, and then the circuit, and then you can see the different countries listed. So I have United States, Italy, Germany, and then the website itself. It says your guard node may not change. That just means that the entry node, if I tear down my circuit, it may not change. I'll show that to you in a second. There's an option for a new circuit. Now you might say, okay, that's great, but where's the SSL stuff, right? And so they kind of buried it under this. So you have to click a second time, and then now you get like what you normally see. You're securely connected to the website, verified by Cloudflare, more information, and then you can get all the certificate stuff itself, okay? So some better indication that you actually are connected would be good. This is overloading, so they're overloading the icon, so it now has two purposes instead of one. That one, I'm not sure what exact guideline you would. I mean, the end result is that users they have a hard time determining how to perform this. So I want to know whether I'm connected. I know it's somewhere in the interface, but I skip past it. In this case, if I make the error of thinking I'm connected, then that's fine. I actually am connected. So it's not really a dangerous error to just go ahead and start using it because I actually am connected. But if I wasn't connected and I thought I was connected, then that would be a dangerous error. Okay, let's tear down the circuit just for fun. So this says new circuit. We'll see what this does. So you can see the United States one stayed the same, and then the other one's changed. Now, yeah, there's some more changes to all of them. Okay, now I noticed here that there's a new identity and a new Tor circuit, okay? So first off, I'm not sure what I'm assuming this is the same as clicking on the button new Tor circuit, right? But what does new identity do? Any guesses? Okay, so it could just change the exit node and nothing else about the circuit because that just gives you a new IP address. It could have nothing to do with Tor. It could be some cookie thing. Okay. So let's click it and see. It could be private browsing mode. Okay. So it says restart your identity. Tor will close all windows and all website sessions and restart. Okay. So why is it showing this to me? So the answer is the cookie one. So actually what it's going to do is it's going to refresh all the cookies. Okay. Now this is another thing that's important about Tor is because they're giving me a brand new browser, okay, when I start using it, all my cookies I'll have no cookies. I'll have blank cookies. I know we haven't talked about cookies. We'll talk about them later, but there are these things that can be used to track you. It's the nature of assignment 2. So in assignment 2, being the dual expert, you're going to have to learn enough about cookies to understand what the software you're analyzing does for you, okay? But what Tor does is it resets all your cookies, okay? Now that's one way that websites can track you. There's another way they can track you, which is as you browse the web, you go to a website and there's some custom font on the website, okay? And you'll install that font. You don't even know what's happening. And now you have an extra font in your computer is because you went to that website. And then you go somewhere else and there's little things like this that get picked up. Now, let's say you go to a website. The website can say, hey, I want to show the user this in this font. Do you have it installed or not? And then your browser will say, yeah, I do, or no, I don't. Okay? Now, because different people go to different websites, you end up actually having slight differences in terms of like your browser and all the like fonts and weird stuff like that, like little settings like that. They'll look a little bit different than mine. Okay? And so what websites started doing is they used that to track users. Especially if users turned off cookies or they disabled it, they said, no problem, I'm going to fingerprint your browser based on all these like configurations that I can see. So what Tor browser does is it makes that every Tor user has the same browser. Like it has the same fonts, the same cookies, the same this, the same that. So you should be, from a browser level, you should also be anonymous within the set of everyone else using Tor browser. Okay? Tor browser will also destroy all that configuration every time you reset the browser, okay? So you'll pick up the stuff as you're browsing, and then it will tear it down. Tor browser will sometimes, I don't know actually the current status. I don't know a good way of testing it, but it used to come with no script, which was an extension that disables JavaScript either selectively or entirely off of web pages. And the reason it did is because in JavaScript, it's not quite this simple, but more or less, where does JavaScript run? So you go to a website and it's using JavaScript. Is that something that's running on the server or is that running on your client? It's on your client. Okay, so that's the stuff that's happening in your browser. Pretend that JavaScript could say, hey, what's my IP address? And then JavaScript would go ask the operating system, the operating system would respond, whose IP address would get loaded into that variable? The users, right? Not the servers, the users, okay? So if I get JavaScript, I just say, what's the IP address? And then I put it in a variable and then I send it back to the server, Okay, so it would be that easy to circumvent Tor. Now you can't do that. My understanding, anyways, I'm not an expert, is that JavaScript doesn't let you do that directly, but there's sort of indirect ways that you can basically get the IP address doing it. So it's dangerous to run IP or JavaScript from untrusted sources. And so they used to do a lot of disabling, but then that would break the web. And then, so now I don't know where, I think they maybe use some defaults that are built into Firefox that are kind of restrict out like scripts that they know that are bad. But anyways, this is just speculation. But they used to do a lot on the JavaScript front. I don't know what the current status of that. Okay, if I want to, this is sort of obvious. If I go over to Safari and, I click on support, did that go over Tor? Okay, if I open my email, does that go over Tor? If I open BitTorrent and I start downloading torrents, is that going over Tor? Okay, so everything that's in the Tor browser is going over Tor, and everything else that isn't. What about my DNS? So I just went to google.com. Before I went to what'smyipaddress.com. My browser doesn't literally go out to what'smyipaddress.com. It has to go out to an IP address. That's where it's routing the packet. So the packets that are flowing through Tor network, they don't have what'smyipaddress.com on them. They have an IP address. Okay? But I had to get that IP address from somewhere. Right? So where did I get it from? I got it from DNS. That's true. So it came from DNS. But who got it? Did I go out on my computer and get it? Because then my ISP knows, because that didn't go over Tor. Right? Do I just ask my ISP? And then they send me the IP address, and then I send the IP traffic over Tor? That would be one way of doing it. Do I go through Tor to DNS? Right? Do I say, hey, Tor, here's my local ISP, right? Here's their DNS address, it's 8.8.4.4, and then I ask Tor to go out over it. The problem with that is that DNS goes over UDP, right? So does Tor support UDP, or is it only, it obviously supports TCP, maybe. Another option is maybe the exit node does it. I could actually tell the exit node, hey, I want to go to what'smyipaddress.com. I didn't look up the IP address. Why don't you do that? Right? You know the website anyways that I'm going to, so why don't you just do the DNS? Right? So anyway, those are the three options. Not clear from the user interface which of the three it's using. Maybe it doesn't matter. The main thing the user cares about is that it is protected. Okay? And so the answer, as I understand it, it is protected, and it uses the third option. So you don't actually do the DNS lookup yourself. Tor will route the domain name across Tor, so the exit node will get the domain name. The exit node will use its own DNS server to resolve that and then go to the IP address of it. So if anyone can independently verify that would be great. But that's my understanding of how it works. Mm-hmm. So this IP address here. So this IP address should be the last IP address in my circuit, but since I tore it down a couple times, let me reset it. This is the website I usually think of for this. But. Okay, I understand your question. Okay, let me first answer the one that's on the top of my mind, and then I'm going to come back to your question. Okay, so what IP address am I seeing here? It should be the exit node. Okay, it's the exit node that's going to the website. So I can see the browser saying my exit node is in Poland, and it has IP 95.2.14, which is not the IP address I'm seeing here. This is showing me a German one. So this is breaking my mental model of how Tor works. So I actually don't know why this isn't showing. Now it's showing England.
Can we search for Tor exit nodes and search for that particular IP address?
Yeah. So you mean like copy this IP address?
This one and the one.
Actually. Okay, let me answer his question and then I'll come back to your idea. Okay, the exit node doesn't use a browser. It's a server, so it just sends out GET requests, and then the GET request comes back, but it doesn't like render it in a browser and display it. So your browser basically, it takes the packets off the wire and then it renders it for display. So the exit node doesn't have to do it. It just has to relay the packets. It won't actually do that step of rendering it. So it uses Tor software, but it doesn't use Tor browser specifically. Does that make sense? Okay, okay.
I was thinking you may be getting cached results, but that wouldn't make sense with the exit.
Yeah, it shouldn't, and also because Tor resets, it's like a clean cache as well. And I went to a new show my IP address.
I meant cached on the exit node,
Oh, I see, I see.
but it wouldn't make sense because it would still be the exit node IP showing.
Right, right, right. And then, sorry, there was what was your suggestion?
We can copy the IP address and look for Tor exit nodes.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, so it would probably come up. It's just kind of awkward because I have to manually type it in. Sorry, I'm having all these thoughts now. Oh yeah, okay. This actually is great. I was curious what would happen because they overload the lock icon with the Tor circuit. So if it wasn't over HTTPS, they would still have to show the lock icon in order for you to get the Tor circuit information. Does anyone know a website that's still on HTTP that is not on HTTPS? It's a hard question these days. Let's go on Google and see if we can find something. I'm just curious what happens here.
Does the testing on does the bad
Anyone speak German?
yeah, the left one is
Okay. Oh, there's some weird history results. So this is not stuff I searched for. So that could be some cache, Google caching based on IP address. Or maybe it was the most popular searches, I don't know. But
Columbia.com. That's HTTP.
sorry, which one?
Columbia.com.
Columbia.edu? I got HTTPS.
I'd like maybe test the bad SSL domain.
Yeah, that's true. We could try that one. Those will give errors, although maybe just let me see. I'm just going to search I'll go to like the 10th page of results and see. There is no 10th page. Oh, there's. It's actually pretty cool that I can't find HTTP. But.
So info.ei.ca. That's the very first one.
Sorry, this is something you saw? Sorry, I'm lost.
So info.
Yeah.
Dot
CERN.
CERN.
Dot C.
CH.
CH. Churn.
No. CA. The CA but CH.
Like this.
No.
Like this, yeah? Okay. So they show a lock with the slash through it. So I was just curious anyway what the icon would be. So anyways, that's reasonable. Okay. Okay. This is fun. Whatever. We did enough of it. We're running out of time. There's only 5 minutes left. I do want to say something about these, or I want to go through the assignment and just make sure if there's any questions about it. Is there any questions about the? Sorry, I don't know what I'm doing here. Are there any questions about the walkthrough itself? Yeah.
So if we have a call task that's really simple, should we avoid it, or is it okay to just have a one paragraph answer?
So I think I asked for like something like 5 or 7. So some of them can be simple.
Yeah, but like in the second part of the assignment where we actually go through the task.
Oh yeah. So try and pick. Let me pull it up. So you have a kind of page length that you can look at, and
Maximum, but I think that might be
try and fill out the page length. So like if you do so many simple tasks and it doesn't fill it out. So the answer is no. Like, pick the longest ones. Or the advice I usually give is pick the most significant ones. So the ones that you think are the most important. If they are the shortest ones, then they're the shortest ones. Yeah. And if you still have space at the end, you can always do more than I asked for or whatever. But like, yeah. Don't cherry pick just the shortest ones so that it's really short. Okay, so in assignment 2, you have a choice of 2 tools. Both of them do a similar thing, which is managing cookies. So Ghostery is the first one. They have a bunch of products, but it's the browser extension that you can do. I mean, you can do the other things if you want to pay for them. That's up to you. And then I was always worried that this would go commercial completely. So then I added Privacy Badger because it will always be open source. So I haven't used these. I have Ghostery installed, but I haven't used them in a while. Like I haven't gone through them and looked at them, so I don't know the current status of them. But anyways, okay. So you're going to do a cognitive walkthrough. So I want 7 core tasks that you might do with these 2 tools. Also, if you want to do a blend, that's fine too. Like if you want to do the same core tasks across, that's more in the later down in this part. But anyways, for each tool, think of 7 different things that the user might do, okay? Describe each, 3 sentences, why you think it's an important task or why users should do it. So 1 sentence, what it is, 1 sentence about what the core task is. Then you don't have to do all 7 of them, so you'll just do a walkthrough of 3 of them. So try and pick the most important ones, the ones that you think are most critical, or the ones where you would have the most to say, that type of thing. And then you just do the walkthrough, okay? So you can use the guidelines that I gave you in the slides and also in the paper. You can look at my paper or some other papers that are on the Moodle for cognitive walkthroughs. But it's basically it's like what I said in words just written down. It's like, okay, the user wants to do this. There's an interface, and if they click this, then this happens, and this is bad because of G4 or G8. Like that's sort of grammatically what it looks like. So you can look at the academic paper to get a feel for it, but the paper is like kind of at a more technical level than you necessarily have to go. Okay. And then if you don't want to use the ones that we use in class, you're free to change them and just justify why you want to choose them. Okay. So for the 3 core tasks of your 7 that you choose, you do the evaluation, write up an evaluation, talk about whether it matches or doesn't match the guidelines, and then limit yourself to 1 page per core task. And if you want to put screenshots and things like that in, sometimes it's easier to have a screenshot rather than trying to explain like what you're seeing. Then that's fine. So you can have an extra kind of page of screenshots as well, because it's easy for the TA. It's not extra reading for the TA itself. Okay. So that's basically it. So it should be pretty straightforward in order to do. Questions about it? Yeah.
Just for the one feature of the scroll down, when you click on this lock button,
Yeah.
I think the first note there is this label like guard. I didn't understand what is guard.
Sure. So guard is, so I called it an entrance node in the slides. The proper term is entry guard. So guard is Tor speak for your entry node. So it's just what they call. So they're just showing you that this is your guard. And then the other thing they're saying is your guard node might not change. And so they have a protocol where, I forget what the reason is. I think it has to do with preventing fingerprinting attacks somehow. I knew at one time, but I've lost the knowledge. But anyways, they have some reason that when you ask for a new circuit, sometimes they don't give you a new entrance node. They'll keep the entrance node the same, but they'll change the rest of the circuit itself. And so it's just warning you that might happen. And when we click, like I just clicked on it and the last 2 nodes changed, but at least the country didn't change. I didn't look closely at the IP address, but I think the IP address is, it's staying the same. So yeah. So that's it. But anyways, guard just means entrance node. Okay, other questions? Okay, great. So good luck on your assignments. You can ask, I guess you have another class to ask me questions anyways.
Both application are free, or one of them is?
They're both free.
Maybe it's not free. But
Yeah, so both of them, so the Ghostery has both free and pro versions. You can do the evaluation on the free version.
Free version.
Yeah, exactly. I would recommend that one. I think it has more features, and it's easier to come up with core tasks. The more features it has, the easier it is to come up with core tasks. I think the EFF one is a little more stripped down. But anyways, it's there as more of a backup, like if you can't get Ghostery working or whatever. Yeah. The other thing is you might have to install a browser that works with these because they're extensions. So like they might be a Chrome extension and they might not work with Safari or Internet Explorer or something. So I also gave both options because I think all the browsers are covered between the two of them, but I can't remember. But, yeah. Okay. All right, great. See you next week.